Possession is written and directed by Andrzej Żuławski and it stars Isabelle Adjani and Sam Neill, which everybody knows from Jurassic Park.
The door locks! Ellie, boot up the door locks!
When it comes to indie art house cult classic type films, this is one of the more popular films that has been constantly requested to me for honestly years at this point. And I was incredibly excited to finally watch this film and give my thoughts to you guys on it. So I really prepared myself for this film. And when I say that, I don't mean that I went into this film with gigantic expectations, but I was definitely prepared to genuinely dig this film and really like this film. And because just from everything I've heard, it would be right up my alley. And just to cut straight to the chase, this was certainly one of the most uncompromising films that I've ever seen in my life. This is one of the most artistic, one of the most boldest films that I've ever seen, you know, among the likes of filmmakers like David Lynch, who just really don't give a shit about what people are going to come out saying about it and just go all in on what they wanted to make. And I highly appreciate and respect films like this that just are unleashed. Like, there's nothing holding them back. They just go full force on what they want to do. And that's just a really respectable thing to me when it comes to filmmaking and really just art in general. But I will say this. I kind of have mixed feelings about this film right now. Because although there is so much to respect about it and so much to appreciate, there were certainly a lot of things that I thought were incredibly effective and thought-provoking. But there were certain things about it in terms of its structure and its style that caught me off guard and I didn't feel like was nearly as effective as it wanted to be. And there were moments that, not gonna lie, was actually incredibly frustrating for me and kind of took me out of the film for a little bit, which is something that I really didn't expect going into this. But before I really dive into some of the criticisms that I currently have with this film, I want to definitely go down the list of the things that I truly liked and appreciated out of this film. First and foremost, Isabelle Adjani's performance in this film is brilliantly insane. It's just absolutely unfathomable how much passion and effort that she put into this role and how incredibly demanding it was for her to really pull off certain scenes because, and honestly, like I say certain scenes because there are a few scenes in here that are just like, holy shit. But really her role is quite demanding throughout the entire runtime of this film because there's not really a dull moment when her character is on screen. And that's just like one of the first things that I have to give praise to because she was just absolutely batshit insane in this film, but I think in the best way possible. Sam Neill as well, the dude from Jurassic Park and other films that I haven't seen, which I need to get on, but most popularly known from Jurassic Park. He was really great in this film too. He gave also, along with Isabelle, a really demanding and strong performance that I think was pulled off incredibly well. Same with Isabelle, there's not really a dull moment with his character. And you just gotta give the two main stars of this film a huge amount of credit for not holding back and really giving this film all their passion and effort. And yeah, so huge praise there. The next thing that I really liked about this film was that it's quite unlike anything that you've really ever seen. And I mean that in the most genuine way I can possibly mean it. This film is absolutely loaded with imagery and sequences that are just gonna stick with you for a very long time, regardless if you even enjoy the film or not. This is truly an unforgettable piece of filmmaking. And, you have to give some credit for that because it's just, if a film is able to stick with you in that way, obviously it's doing its job. And if it's doing its job, then, you have to give some praise there. One thing that I also really enjoyed about this film was that in terms of its narrative and some of its themes, it is quite an abstract and open to interpretation type of ambiguous piece of filmmaking. And y'all know me, like I really love films that are open to interpretation. And this film is incredibly open. Maybe it's a little bit too open, But I think that it drew enough lines between things and just met the threshold of not being too abstract to the point where anybody can impose any interpretation they want and be valid. But it is a pretty open to interpretation movie where, like, when the ending finally happens, like, 99.99% of people are just going to be like, what the fuck did I just watch? What does any of that really even mean? And in terms of art, like, I think that is one thing that makes art incredibly special. So that's one thing that I enjoyed out of the film as well. And one thing that I think people should prepare for if they haven't seen it before going into this film, is that this entire film is incredibly allegorical and metaphorical, to the point where, like, nothing that really happens in this film feels like real life or even realistic. You have to, for an example, like with a film like Mother, Darren Aronofsky's Mother, nothing in that film really feels like real life per se, but that's just because, there's an understanding that everything that's happening is allegorical and metaphorical or symbolic. This film has a similarity to that kind of approach, to where, characters don't really react in a way that you would expect them to react. Certain sequences happen in a way that feels really abrupt and surreal that, is quite frustrating, at least for me. But I was certainly able to grasp the kind of allegorical foundation it was going for, in terms of representing a marriage that is absolutely spiraling out of control and ends up serving as a giant symbol for divorce throughout the entire film, which also, expresses a sort of religious foundation that marriage rests upon. And I like that. I like the foundation that the film had, and also in terms of infidelity as well. Like, all that is kind of thrown into the mix as this one kind of metaphorical piece. And I really enjoyed the concept. Like, I think the concept on its own is really interesting and can be really thought-provoking. But to finally move on to some of the criticisms that I have with this film, for me, I just feel like the writing, its coherence, its narrative structure, and its style, it really just, in a lot of different moments, didn't really click with me. And like I said earlier in this review, would take me out of the film, and I would be incredibly frustrated by. And I guess to give, like, the first example of what I'm talking about here is, like, the writing in terms of some of the dialogue, I found quite disappointing, because I found it incredibly expositional in the sense that it's just verbally spoon-feeding you what certain themes mean in this film. And it sucks because there were some incredible sequences in this film, just the crazy iconic one with Isabel where she's, like, in the alleyway and she's just flipping shit. Incredible scene, by the way. She acted the shit out of that. Again, that's one of those moments that's, like, really unlike anything you've ever seen. One of my favorite movies, Climax, apparently took inspiration from that, and it's really apparent when you're watching it. But, after we get that scene, like, right afterwards, her character is explaining exactly, like she's explaining the thematic relevance of that scene in terms of what it means for her character. And it was just so, like, I don't know, I felt like it really spoils the brilliance of a scene like that. And there's also, like, numerous times where the character's breaking the fourth wall and she's just straight up explaining to the audience about, like, her character themes and the overall themes of the film. And, obviously, like, the film offers much more than what the character is spilling out. Like, there's so much to read into besides what she's saying. But I feel like, if you're going to have a really more or less abstract kind of film that's just really open to interpretation, I feel like all those scenes where she's explaining stuff, you could have easily conveyed that through imagery or visual storytelling. And instead, we just kind of got these, really artsy fourth wall breaks of a character explaining stuff to you. And those scenes really bothered me, to be honest. And that was definitely one of the handful of scenes that really took me out of the film, unfortunately. But don't get me wrong, like, not every fourth wall break I thought was ineffective. The ballet scene, for those who have seen it knows exactly what I'm talking about. The ballet scene I thought was incredibly effective because when she would break the fourth wall, it wasn't really taken note of, and it was much more subtle about it. And I thought it gave much more power to the scene because not only was it, really creative, but it was creepy at the same time because this is a horror film, and I felt like scenes like that really was really more unsettling. And there's also some scenes where characters are just talking to themselves, and it's usually some sort of, philosophical element to the film, and I wasn't really a fan of those either. And, it's kind of the same somewhat issues I have with Tarkovsky films sometimes, where the characters are just doing too much talking in terms of the philosophy of what the film is saying. And I just wasn't a big fan of that kind of stuff. But, beyond the writing, overall, I just feel, and I hate to say it, I feel like the film was a bit choppy. And I understand that this might be purposeful. Not even might. Like, I'm like 90% sure that it was all intentional. But the choppiness of this film would really take me out as well, because there are moments where, like, there's absolutely no score for a very long time, then all of a sudden, randomly, after a jump cut, there's this huge score that would last for, like, 5 seconds, and you think the scene is gonna, like, something big's gonna build up, and then it just cuts abruptly and is on to the next thing that's totally different. There's no score, no anything. It's just very choppy in that sense. And I felt like when the film does that, it doesn't really allow the atmosphere or any moments to really settle and linger at least for me. Like, I didn't really feel like it was giving me a moment to really take in the atmosphere of what was happening. And I get that the film is really chaotic. So I feel like maybe the editing style is to further enhance the kind of chaotic nature that it's going for. But for me, it just didn't work because I felt like it was taking me out of the immersion that I was feeling. And, on top of that, there are some elements about the score that I feel like are just dated in a sense. Like, and I get, like, it's hard for a film to not be dated when it was made in 1981. But, like, there are moments where it just feels too 80s, like, incredibly too 80s. And not only that, like, the score just comes in really abruptly. And there's a part in the third act with Sam Neill's character, and he's like there, and involves like a dead dog in the river, and then there's a part where it's this 80s sounding like pop score that comes in like out of nowhere, and a character comes in and just starts like explaining a lot of what's happening and the thematic relevance of Sam Neill's character. And it's just one of those scenes that kind of encapsulates my issues that I had with this film. And the narrative in this film, I didn't find all that compelling or coherent. And a lot of that just has to do with, again, this film's abrupt nature, to where like one thing happens after the other. You don't feel any real like connection from one thing to the next sometimes. And it feels a bit all over the place. And when the film's narrative is naturally like that, it's kind of hard for me to care about some of the bigger moments that happen because I feel like there wasn't a genuine, honest build-up to those moments. And, I know at this point, people who really, really love this film will probably hate my fucking guts right now. But, I'm just telling you how I honestly feel about it. And if I told you that I loved every second of this film, I didn't have a problem with it, I would be straight up lying. And, it's kind of hard for me to come in here and talk to you guys about my honest feelings about this film. Because, y'all know me, like, I really love films that have deep artistic efforts behind them and just are loaded with creativity. And this film has all that. But I just feel like the structure and the style kind of hindered its coherence for me and robbed me of some really good immersive moments that I felt like I would have really enjoyed more if it wasn't for some of that writing and some of that style. And for those who know me, like, y'all know that I really enjoy boundary pushing films and I highly respect them. One of my favorite directors is Lars von Trier, and he has just the most batshit, no holds barred type of films. And, he also has films that, with problems that I have with this film, his films are also expositional in ways that he is kind of telling audiences what certain meanings are. And I do have some problems with his films in the same way, but I feel like Von Trier just has a style and a coherent structure to most of his films that I'm able to really immerse myself in. And I feel like this film kind of lacked a bit of those things for me. But that being said, like I said, guys, I still think this is still a quite impressive film, and I highly admire the film's ambition when it comes to its artistic efforts, because it just goes all the way with a lot of different things in this film. And, you know, when it comes to the ending, again, it's a bit abstract and it's definitely interpretive in a lot of different ways, but I liked that about this film. I think this film's third act overall was one of the better aspects of it. But this is certainly a film that I can honestly only recommend to cinephiles. Like, even just like your normal person who says, "Oh, I love horror movies," like this would be the last film that I would recommend them to watch. That doesn't mean it's inherently bad or anything. You know, I'm just telling you that so you can get an understanding of what this film is going to offer and what kind of experience you can expect out of it. But with all of that being said and taking everything into account, I'm going to give Possession a 7.5 out of 10. One thing that I did love about this film is that it's incredibly fun to talk about once it's over with other people. Like, you can just talk for days about this film and what you think certain scenes meant, what you think the ending was supposed to be about, and just talk about how batshit certain scenes were, and just, you know, this is a really fun discussion piece, as most great artworks are. And, yeah, again, like, this film has a lot to offer, and I do admire its overall artistic ambition, because it is just fucking everywhere, and again, does not give any ounce of shit about like what some people might judge this film for. And yeah, it's incredibly unforgiving, and unforgiving art pieces is something that I'm always going to give respect for, even if it's not even my taste. I'm always going to respect that kind of stuff. So I definitely recommend to people who are cinephiles and love cinema in terms of it being an art form. But I would definitely recommend that casual moviegoers probably stay away from this one, unless you're just super curious and are one of the treacherous ones and just want to go and see what you think about it. Then fine, but don't say I didn't warn you. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Possession. I'm sure that this will be a really interesting comment section. I really cannot wait to hear what everybody has to say about this film, and can't wait to hear all the feedback everybody's going to give me, because I'm sure I'm kind of ruffling some feathers at this point. But I love hearing feedback from you guys, and I will do my best to respond and give a heart to every single one of them. And if there's any films that you guys want to request for me to watch and review, please leave that in the comment section as well. At some point soon, I'm going to be gathering up a lot of these requests and making a Twitter poll out of them. So make sure that you follow me on Twitter so you can actually participate in that kind of interactive stuff. So if you really enjoyed what I had to say about Possession, please give this video a like and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.